All right, so like listen, inflated prices in one city, they can actually trigger tech changes that just sweep the globe.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think those two things would even be connected, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
But that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today.
Right.
We've got Kartik's analysis on how this all works. And let me tell you, it is a real eye-opener.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that he kicks it off with something that most people wouldn't even connect to, like global tech shifts. The New York City taxi medallion bubble.
Okay, so back in like the early 2000s,
Yeah.
owning a taxi medallion in New York City, it was like having a license to print money, right?
Right.
But then things got a little too greedy, as Kartik puts it.
Well, the price of a medallion,
Yep.
basically the permit to even operate a taxi,
Yeah.
just went through the roof. I mean, in 2004, it was around $200,000.
Yeah.
By 2013, a cool $1 million.
Wow.
Imagine that, $1 million just for the right to drive a cab.
That is
So
mind-boggling.
really,
But that crazy price tag that created the perfect opening for a disruptor, right?
exactly.
Enter Uber.
Right. They swooped right in with better service at a way lower price.
Yeah.
And they just totally exploited the vulnerability that was created by the artificially inflated medallion costs.
Yeah.
So suddenly everybody's ditching taxis, they're hopping into Ubers.
And here's where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's that Uber's success wasn't just confined to New York.
Right.
It just spread like wildfire,
Yeah.
changing the way people get around in cities all over the world,
Yeah.
even in places where taxis weren't ridiculously priced to begin with.
It's a ripple effect. So those artificially high prices in one city spurred a technological innovation that ended up impacting the entire world.
Yeah.
And what's even more intriguing is that Kartik sees parallels with what's happening in real estate today,
Oh, really?
especially in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles.
He's talking about like those sky-high housing costs, right?
Mhm.
But how does that tie into like this whole disruption thing?
Well, he argues that government regulations, specifically zoning laws,
Yeah.
they're artificially driving up those real estate prices in these cities. And he uses the term zoning tax
Okay.
to describe this effect.
Zoning tax. Okay, I need a bit more on that. What exactly does he mean?
Essentially, it's like this hidden cost
Okay.
that's imposed by these restrictive zoning laws
Okay.
that limit housing supply. Think of it this way. Imagine a city
Yeah.
where zoning regulations only allow for single-family homes
Right.
on large lots.
Okay.
So this drastically reduces the number of homes that can even be built,
Okay.
even if there's plenty of land available.
So that like they're intentionally creating a scarcity,
Right.
even when it doesn't need to exist.
Exactly. And just like those taxi medallions, this artificial scarcity leads to inflated prices
Okay.
and then creates that ripe environment for disruption
Yeah.
that we were talking about.
Interesting there. Okay, so we've got these zoning laws creating this zoning tax and making housing like crazy expensive.
Right.
But where does the technology come into play?
Yeah.
Is he predicting some kind of like Uber for housing?
He doesn't explicitly say that,
Okay.
but he does point to the rise of remote work and technologies like Zoom
Okay.
as potential disruptors, much like what Uber did to the taxi industry.
Okay.
So think about it.
Yeah.
If more people are working remotely,
Yeah.
the need to be physically present in those super expensive cities
Right.
starts to diminish.
Yeah, that cramped studio apartment in San Francisco doesn't seem so appealing.
Right.
When you can have a spacious house with a yard somewhere way more affordable
Exactly.
and still do your job just fine from home.
Exactly. And that's where the Shatterpoint comes in.
Okay.
Kartik believes that if enough people embrace this new way of working and living,
Yeah.
we could see a mass exodus from those traditionally expensive areas, driven by the technology that makes it possible.
Okay. I can see how that would really shake things up.
Yeah.
But wouldn't a drop in demand just cause real estate prices to plummet?
Right.
I mean, what happens to the people who own homes in those cities?
Yeah.
Or the people who can't just pick up and move?
That's a critical question.
Yeah.
And it's one that Kartik acknowledges.
Okay.
He suggests that this potential shift could have major implications
Okay.
for the economic and social fabric of these cities. I mean, we could see a decline in property values, a reshuffling of the job market, maybe even a reimagining of what urban life looks like.
So to recap,
Yeah.
we've got artificially high prices,
Yeah.
driven in part by government regulations, creating this vulnerability.
Yeah.
Then technological advancements come along. They exploit that vulnerability.
Right.
potentially leading to massive disruption.
Exactly.
But not just in the cities with the inflated prices,
Right.
but all across the world.
Yeah, it's like a chain reaction.
It is a chain reaction.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
It's crazy.
So it's not just limited to taxis and real estate.
No.
He argues that this same pattern is playing out in other industries as well.
Uh-huh.
He even mentions OPEC and the oil market
Oh, yeah.
as an example.
Right.
Remember back when oil prices were sky high?
Oh, yeah. Those were some painful days at the pump.
Yeah, tell me about it.
It was rough.
Hard to forget.
Yeah.
Well, he points out that OPEC,
Yeah.
the cartel that controls a big chunk of global oil production,
Right.
they thought they could keep those prices high indefinitely.
Of course.
But then technological advancements in areas like fracking
Yeah.
led to a surge in oil production,
Right.
undercutting OPEC's control and
Yeah.
causing prices to drop.
Exactly.
So it's this recurring theme.
Mhm.
An established system with artificially inflated prices gets disrupted by new technologies
Right.
that offer a better or cheaper alternative.
Exactly.
And because of global interconnectedness,
Yeah.
these disruptions can have ripple effects far beyond their origin,
Right.
impacting the entire world.
It really highlights how economics, technology, and human behavior are all intertwined.
Yeah.
What might seem like isolated events are actually connected in some very unexpected ways.
Yeah, that's true.
And the implications can be global.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
We've explored Kartik's analysis of how artificially high prices, often caused by government regulations, can create the perfect breeding ground for technological disruption.
Right.
We've seen how this happened with taxis,
Mm-hmm.
how it could be unfolding in real estate,
Yeah.
and how it's a pattern that we're seeing across different industries.
And what's crucial for our listeners is understanding how these seemingly distant events can have very real consequences in their own lives. It's about connecting these global trends to your own life, your own city, your own job.
Exactly. So let's bring it down to earth. What are some specific ways that these disruptions can ripple out and impact people's lives, even if they don't live in a place like San Francisco or New York?
Well, think about the job market. The rise of remote work, which we discussed earlier, is already reshaping how and where people work. Companies are no longer limited to hiring locally, and employees have more flexibility in where they choose to live.
So that could be a good thing for people in areas with fewer job opportunities, right? They could potentially land a great job with a company based halfway across the world.
Absolutely. But it also means increased competition for certain jobs, as people from all over the globe can now apply for the same positions. And for those in traditional office-based roles, it could mean adapting to a new way of working, which might not be everyone's cup of tea.
And then there's the cost of living.
Yeah.
If people are no longer tied to expensive cities for work, could that actually drive down housing costs in those areas? What would that mean for people who already own homes there?
That's certainly a possibility. If demand for housing in those cities decreases, prices could potentially drop. While that might sound good for renters, it could negatively impact homeowners who might see their property values decline.
So it's a mixed bag. Some people benefit, others might face challenges. It really highlights how these disruptions create winners and losers, and it's not always clear-cut who will fall into which category.
Precisely, and it underscores the importance of adaptability. Kartik emphasizes that in a world shaped by rapid technological advancements and unpredictable disruptions, being able to adapt is key. It's about embracing lifelong learning, being open to new opportunities, and developing the skills needed to thrive in a constantly changing landscape.
That's great advice. So to wrap things up, we've learned that inflated prices often caused by government regulations can create vulnerabilities that spark technological disruptions with far-reaching consequences. These disruptions, while originating in specific locations, can ultimately change the way we live and work on a global scale.
And what's most important is that our listeners take these insights and apply them to their own lives. Pay attention to the trends shaping the world around you, consider the potential impacts on your industry and community, and be prepared to adapt and evolve as the landscape shifts. As Kartik says, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed.
That's a great quote to end on. So to all our deep divers out there, stay curious, stay informed, and stay adaptable. The future is full of exciting possibilities, but navigating it successfully requires awareness, understanding, and a willingness to embrace change. And until next time, keep exploring those connections.